animating some sea creature stuff. Gonna be doing the cell shading and whatnot. So just kind of getting the eye highlight in frame by frame here. Can be a kind of tedious process, but I enjoy the cell shading aspect of animation because all the frames are already drawn, all the brain work is pretty much done with the rough animation and the clean line work. So now it's just a matter of following the contour lines of this eyeball, and I know the light is coming from the upper left, so just kind of have to hit it at this angle and rock it out. Now I'll already go ahead and check how this looks in motion so far. I'm gonna zoom in so I can get better control over my eye shading. This little squid is gonna be swimming in a seamless loop. So the first frame is gonna connect to the last frame, so it can loop infinitely. But I just have to get all the cell shading in to make it less flat looking. So something about digital coloring, the flats are really flat. If you were to color this with cells or physical media, then there'd be variation in texture. It wouldn't be quite as flat. So even just getting a few highlights in can really help it feel a little more poppin'. I'll have the highlight in the eye kind of shrink as it goes down. The squid's kind of doing a twist, so the eye's gonna go behind the body now and we won't be able to see it. Now it's behind the body and he's gonna twist back around. What's up, Polar? These are some other creatures. These are the style frames. Hey, thanks, Budding Animation. I appreciate the kind words. This is what the squid's gonna look like. This is a finished frame. So I'll have highlights, shading layer, and then I have this little fish guy, and then something inspired by eels, and then a little stingray kind of guy, and a little Dorito looking fish, and some some other fishes in there. Yep. But for now, I'm animating this guy. It's like this. I'm animating in TV Paint. I've had the Toon Boom sales rep in my email trying to get me on Toon Boom for a while now. I'm just waiting for a sale. I would like to get onto Toon Boom though, and I'm trying to learn Blender. Too many animation programs to learn. I have Moho, but I've never really used it. That's more for puppet type animation. But I want to animate in some free programs too and make tutorials, because a lot of the tutorials I do on YouTube, Mikey B Zan Animation on YouTube, of course I'm animating in TV Paint, and a lot of people are intimidated by the program because it can be a little pricey. So I'd like to start doing tutorials in Flip a Clip and Krita to show that you can learn animation even on free software. You don't have to have a super expensive thing or some kind of subscription can even draw on paper, making flip books. I know Procreate's super popular right now. I really like how the brushes in Procreate look. I wish you could use it on desktop. I would animate in that if I could. Now I'm having this bottom highlight dissipate and shrink, and I'm creating a new highlight emerging on the top of the eye. That's awesome. Yeah, it makes it more accessible. Yep, that's the idea. Of course, even learning free programs, there's probably a learning curve. I mean, of course, Blender's free. That program is a lot you can do in it, and it can be kind of confusing just to know what to click on. I feel like I need to download a new brain just to learn all the shortcuts. But the thing I like about Blender is there's so many tutorials and so much community support on that software. I'm not animating with my lightbox on. I'm just kind of flipping back and forth between frames to compare the previous frame to the current frame. Sometimes when you have the lightbox on, it's hard to judge what your current frame even looks like, because you have these onion-skinned images distorting your view. But if I was doing in-betweens, then I would have the lightbox on to make sure that the in-betweens are more precise. Now I'm kind of having the highlight stretch with his eye. So you can have the shading and highlights squash and stretch as well. I'll just see what this looks like. This little section here. Recommendations for someone trying to get into animation. Well, it depends on a few things. What you're going into, stop motion, hand-drawn, 3D, etc. But there are principles of animation that apply to any style and any software. And the first thing probably to learn is to just do a bouncing ball. Plenty of tutorials on YouTube how to do this. Because with the bouncing ball exercise, you'll learn timing and spacing. You'll learn ease in and ease out. You'll learn, which ease in and ease out also can be called slow in, slow out, acceleration, deceleration. The concept basically is the closer your frames are together, the slower it goes, and then you can gradually space them apart more to create speed, and things don't come to a complete stop right away. Also with bouncing balls, you'll learn squash and stretch and how to animate arcs. So that would be the first kind of exercise to practice. And then some good resources would be the Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. A lot of the information in it is kind of dated. Like the first 60 pages you can almost treat more as a history book. Like there's a lot of things that are kind of irrelevant in some of the older animation books that software does now. Like the timeline down here, we don't have to physically write on an X sheet all the individual frames, so some of that information is kind of more just interesting as a historical thing. But the Animator Survival Kit will teach you really good mechanics of motion. It goes really into depth on walk cycles, and yeah, it's definitely one I recommend regardless of whatever you're going into. But also just like maybe create a small project. Like one of the best ways to learn anything is to have a project to work on. So even just like maybe a 10 or 15 second short that has a beginning, middle, and end. because then you can practice storyboarding out your ideas, thumbnailing out your ideas, how to make a sequence of animation with connected shots. Because animation isn't just about any one individual thing moving. If you're telling any kind of story, then it's about shot flow as well. How does the previous shot lead into the next shot? How do you guide the viewer's eye? How long do you show any individual scene? And when you start animating, you'll start paying more attention to movies and shows that you watch, even just live action stuff. You'll think more about the editing and the pacing. It's kind of like if you've ever learned an instrument, you'll start listening for that instrument in songs that you hear. Like if you start learning bass guitar, you'll probably really start noticing the bass guitar in songs where maybe you didn't notice that instrument as much before. So just learning any kind of skill, it makes you appreciate the art form more, and you can just draw inspiration from all these other things that you might not have noticed before. And also just don't get overwhelmed. You know, nothing's gonna be perfect right away. Well, or ever actually. So also just have fun, you know. But I really appreciate the question. And don't give up, because animation skills come slowly. Well, actually you'll notice you'll pick up skills pretty quickly at first, but like any kind of thing that you're learning, be it an instrument or even a sport or anything, the beginning stages you'll level up faster, and then after a while you'll start to hit plateaus where it feels like you're not leveling up as much, but you actually are. It's just that you've become more perceptive to your flaws, so you don't notice the gains as much. But it's interesting, different stages of animation engage different thought processes. Like if you're doing storyboards or thumbnails, you're thinking a lot more critically about the larger scope. You're thinking more holistically, and you probably can't have any distractions around you in terms of sound. You could have some wordless music on, but anything with lyrics or people talking is going to be very distracting and difficult to concentrate. But then after you've done your keyframes and all the things that require a lot of heavy lifting in your mind, when you do things like the cleanup where you're just tracing the line art, or you're doing the coloring or cell shading, what I'm doing right now, just shading stuff, this doesn't take like hardly any mental bandwidth in terms of talking or hearing people talk, because I don't have to think critically really. It's more just about seeing where the shades are gonna go, and that is a little more relaxing. So I'll often put on an audiobook or just listen to YouTube videos to help the time go by a little faster, doing these kind of more repetitive, tedious things. Then the challenge is more just sitting down long enough to get it done. But also, especially with animation or any kind of profession where you're sitting a lot, it's actually super important to take breaks from sitting. The recommendation is every 20 minutes you get up for at least 20 seconds, stretch, and look at something at least 20 feet away. And this will get your blood flowing, but also help your eyes not to get strained, seeing things close up all the time. I know my eyesight has gotten worse. I wear these blue light glasses in the nighttime That definitely helped me not get headaches as much. I was kind of getting headaches from screens, but it blocks the blue light, reduces the strain. And then of course, getting a daily walk in. It's not just about your body, it's also about your mind. Well, of course your brain is part of your body. I never really understood that distinction between, or this, it kind of feels like a false dichotomy. When they talk about mental health and physical health. Obviously, you know, they're different, but they're also intertwined, because your brain is literally a physical organ and your mind is just the process of what your brain creates. Your thoughts are happening in your brain. So getting a walk in, I noticed, definitely helps my creative process mentally. Even though walking you think of as a physical thing, it is definitely just as beneficial for your mind as your body, as it gets blood actually flowing in your brain. It's just kind of weird to think about the mechanics of the creative process, because it feels like sometimes creativity is this ethereal, mystical thing. But like, if you don't take care of your body, and you're like putting a bunch of garbage in your body, that all is going into your blood, that's flowing into your brain. Your brain is a super nutrient hungry organ, consumes 20% of the calories you eat. So you need your fatty acids, because your brain's like 60% fat as well, the actual composition of it. So it's like this mechanical thing you have to take care of and service, like a car, to keep it running properly and having long-term creative success. You know, you don't want to burn out super fast, especially when you get like in your 30s. I'm in my approaching my mid 30s, which I guess isn't really old or anything, but I definitely notice I can't pull all-nighters like I used to when I was 20 if I was like rushing on a project. So now it's about being smarter and negotiating deadlines and kind of standing up for myself a little more, in terms of I have to explain, like, I need some more, I'm gonna need this amount of time to get this thing done. I can't just make a crazy promise and then not sleep for days. But sometimes, like, you have to do those crunch times, especially if you're in college or, you know, in your 20s. There is a time to really hustle, but just make sure you recover. You have recover time in there, because you do build up sleep debt over time, and like actual toxins build up in your brain from not sleeping. And yeah, sleep is just as important as food and water. So I don't really understand why some like the hustle culture stuff, they kind of glorify not sleeping or bragging about how many they worked, like 1,000 hours this week. That to me just shows inefficiency. Like, I think it's cooler to say I got this big thing done in 50% faster time than I thought it would take. That doesn't mean you've been lazier. That just means you've delegated your time more efficiently. That's something I'm trying to put into practice, because of course, doing hand-drawn animation, there are some, you know, just a natural quality about it is that it does take a crap ton of time. There's not like some magic button I can push to just get all these details in. So at a certain point, you do just have to put your nose to the grindstone and just like do some super crazy long work sessions. But again, I try to balance this with a daily walk and stuff like that. Even like play some video games or do something, listen to some music, just something to keep your spirit up. Because yeah, if you're getting really depressed or down, at least for me, I find it hard to stay motivated on actual productive type of work. So sometimes you also just have to detach from what you're doing and not be emotionally connected to it, which sounds weird to say because making art or animation is it's a creative process, so it's part of you. You're putting yourself out there. But at a certain point during the process, I find that after I get the idea down, after I have the initial keyframes in, and it's all planned out, and then it's just a matter of like putting the final pieces together, like all the extra frames and all the coloring and cell shading, the stuff that takes a really long time. At that point, I've pretty much, in a way, disconnected myself from the work, and I'm more just a vessel, a machine that the work is using to finish itself. And it feels almost like I'm not the one drawing this. I'm not the thinker of my own thoughts. I'm not the doer of my own actions. It's kind of sounds like a fatalist perspective, but there's something freeing about it, because if you have a more anxious or neurotic disposition like I do, then you kind of have the opposite problem where you care too much about stuff. You care too much about what people are thinking. You care too much about the outcome. You'd struggle with perfectionism. So at a certain point, you just have to realize this isn't brain surgery. It's not that important. I'm going to do my absolute best, and that's all I can do. And then at that point, then it literally doesn't make sense to worry anymore, because the worrying won't actually make anything better, even though it feels like the default state to worry about things. It has never actually in my life improved anything, so it seems like I should learn that, hey, just don't worry about it. And eventually, little by little, through practice, this telling yourself not to worry about the thing that you're worrying about, you start to forget to even tell yourself that because you're not worrying about it. Whew, I need to take a drink of water. Oh yeah, I need to save too. Another pro tip, always save your program every so often. Mushrooms, why is it moving? Pure artistic impulse at this stage. This is extremely good advice. Pineapple pizza latte. Thank you. I'm glad. I hope it helps. What's up, Leah? I feel like that when I crochet. Pretty sure it's genetic memory, to be honest. I like your art. It's good. Keep it up. Thank you, everybody. It's turning out so cool. Honeybee FF. Big thanks. I appreciate the interactions, and yes, you've all been perceived. I'm perceiving you right now, at least your usernames. Here, you can perceive me. This is my sock glove. It's very high tech, brought to you by Fruit of the Loom, and I use it so my hand doesn't stick to the screen, and I find it very effective. It's also way more cheaper than the real drawing gloves. So that's a pro tip. Just get a sock and rock it out. I'm procrastinating streaming myself, but I'm glad I found your art. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, streaming is weird. This is the first month I've ever done it. And as a highly introverted person, I surprisingly am not having a panic attack. Which I actually feel like this is kind of helping my social anxiety. Kind of like it's exposure therapy. But I know if I was like actually in person on a stage, I guess that would be way scarier. Because streaming, I have an out. I could just turn this off. It's not like it's a big deal. Whereas if you're on stage, you kind of draw more attention to yourself if you walk off stage randomly. There's kind of no smooth exit from a live experience, from a truly live experience. But yeah, my TikTok live recommendations are kind of crazy. I get a lot of maybe it's just because I watched one of them, but there's so many flat earth stuff on TikTok. I don't know if it, like, even the feed, I don't know why, or if like people are trolling, or I didn't realize it was so popular. Hopefully I didn't offend anyone if they're into that stuff watching right now, but it's just a little bit peculiar. it's weird, like, nah. Nah, I won't get it. I won't get into it. Hanging out is a vibe. It's like we're in your room. Whoa, that's scary. Yeah, don't Wacom's come with a free drawing glove. Mine didn't. I'm drawing on a Cintiq 22 HD, and yeah, and then I got a Wacom 1, which is a portable drawing tablet, and I use that if I have to go somewhere. Just bring my laptop and the portable drawing tablet, and I can kind of get some stuff done. But nope, mine didn't come with a glove. I'll just see how this looks so far. It's kind of a little jellyfish guy. He kind of breaks apart at the top. And these aren't like super accurate creatures or anything. So yeah. But I'll show you some other ones I have on here. I got some like dolphins and some fish, and let me find my thingy in here. I have a whale with 3 eyeballs. Actually kind of did these for Bad Bunny a couple years ago. I didn't even know who Bad Bunny was. I guess he's popular. I still haven't really listened to his music, but these wait, where is it? Oh, here it is. Yeah, I thought I was talking to my friend. He asked if I was on any projects, and I said I was working on something for a Bad Rabbit, and he's like, "Do you mean Bad Bunny?" And then that's when I realized what it was. This is like a little dolphin guy. Whoops. These are at 15 frames a second on 2s, or rather 30 frames a second on 2s, which effectively makes it 15 frames a second. So yeah, I normally animate at 15 frames a second actually. The standard for 2D hand-drawn animation is 24 frames a second, and usually people will animate on 2s, so it'll really be 12 frames a second. Or sometimes you'll have parts that are on 3s or 4s, so it could be 8 frames or 6 frames a second. But I find that like 24 frames a second is good for fast stuff, or for you want to have really smooth fluid motion, but it's also really time consuming because it's twice as many drawings as 12. And then 12 frames a second is a little more choppy, but it has a nice snap to it, but it's not as buttery smooth. So I found that 15 frames a second feels a lot more smooth than 12, but it's only 3 more drawings than 12. But it's a lot less drawings than 24 frames a second. 9 frames less than 24. But to my eye, it almost feels like 24 frames a second. So I just think that 15 frames a second is a really sweet spot for hand-drawn animation. Because it's, especially for these kind of loops I'm doing that are like VJ loops, kind of fluid, it just works better. This one's actually on 3s at 30 frames a second, so this one's actually 10 frames a second, and you can notice that it's more choppy. But I felt that, well, there were a couple of things that I was under a time crunch, so I couldn't really, add more in-betweens. And I also wanted to have the eyeballs shooting out some bubbles, like how they do out of their holes on their backs. But I was just pressed for time, and these little lines down here on its body surprisingly was harder to in between and animate than you would think, because I was also doing this in perspective. So there's like, imagine a middle line here, and that's kind of the middle section. So this part, even though this particular loop I'm not super duper happy with, it's not my favorite, this one was technically a lot harder to do, also because he's kind of going back in perspective. So yeah, just different methods of doing things. Just a little random star. But yeah, and then I gotta color these ones. So anyways, I suppose I'm done. I'm gonna just